Good evening. This is The Probe. There's a quote from Niccolo Machiavelli, author of The Prince, undoubtedly my favorite. It is much more secure to be feared than to be loved. And in many ways, he's been proven right. In a world where security concerns have become increasingly intertwined with the need for compassion and empathy, nations are rather grappling with striking the right balance to be feared or to be loved. Difficult, right? But think about it always, because they both have implications unless you are a Machiavellian. Tonight, we embark on a thought-provoking journey delving into the delicate balance between national security on one hand and compassion on the other. Our focus is on the pressing issue of terror threats and the challenges faced by Ghana in navigating this complex dilemma, especially at a time our national security is undertaking an operation, as it were, to minimize or totally eliminate terror threats. Are we violating the 1951 Refugee Convention? What about the Ghanaian laws and the duties of the government to protect its citizens? All that and more right here on The Probe, live on the Joy News channel, also on Joy 99.7 FM. We're on myjoyonline.com. We're on a number of affiliates across the country. We're also on social media. You need to join the discussion with the hashtag The Probe. My guest tonight in the studio is Amankwa Manu. He's the Deputy Defence Minister and MP for Atwima. Joins me in the studios. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
We're ready for us?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Also, will be joining us on Zoom will be the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Refugee Board. We'll also have some interventions along the line by Mukhtar Mumuni, and then also the ranking member on the Defence and Interior Committee of Parliament, James Agauga. Do stay with us. This is The Probe. I am Emefa Apawu. We're right back. This is The Probe. You're welcome. We are live on Joy 99.7 FM on radio. We are on Joy News. We are on DSTV channel 421. Go TV channel is 125. And all our social media platforms. Tonight, terror threat, navigating the dilemma of national security versus compassion. That's what we are looking at in the wake of that operation that's been undertaken by government. We are told they're only targeting those who are coming in illegally and then also pose a terror threat to the country. We are interrogating that. Mr. Amankwa Manu, Deputy Defence Minister, is my guest in the studio. Like I said, also will be joined along the line by the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Refugee Board, Mr. Tetekwao Paddy, via Zoom. Mukhtar Mumuni is also the Executive Director, West Africa Center for Counter Extremism, also joins me via Zoom. And then the ranking member on Defence and Interior Committee in Parliament, James Agauga, also will be on Zoom. Thank you so much for agreeing to be with us here on The Probe, sir.
My pleasure.
Okay, once again. So it's been a week of parliamentary changes amongst others. We've seen some sweeping changes that have been proposed in terms of committees, amongst others, the Intelligence Committee that was mooted. I heard some comments on it, but I don't know what your overall take is on some of these changes that you're seeking to make in Parliament, since you're also a member of Parliament.
Well, I think I haven't actually averted my mind to the changes. But in Parliament, I think it's an opportunity for almost every parliamentarian to learn something new. I went to Parliament and all I knew was join my grandfather to the cocoa farm, to do some weeding here and there. But I was put on the Agri Committee, and by and large, I think I'm learning new stuff. And so I believe that whatever the changes are, I think the whoever is put there is
okay. Well, there were some proposals that they should be asked to swear oath, amongst others. But these are issues that we'll get into much later when we fine-tune all those. But one key concern, at least, I'm not sure if I'm sure that you've seen the UNDP report. There were some concerns about this big campaign that your outfit launched, See Something, Say Something. I'm curious about the impact that it's made so far. I think it's about a year on or so. The UNDP raised concerns that it wasn't targeted because the language in which is being communicated, for instance, was of key concern, because those who are supposed to know it, at least in the northern part of the country, are simply not too much aware about this. I'm sure this report has been brought to your attention.
Well, I think that it was not specifically for the people in the north. we are talking about security, and I see security as a collective concern. Almost every Ghanaian must be concerned about security. And so I have always held the belief that security is not the preserve of only a few. It's a collective thing. Everybody must be conscious of his or her environment. If we need to drill down more with the education, that it's something that we really have to look at critically. But to say that certain people must be targeted, I think that every person living within the four walls of Ghana must be targeted. Everybody must be concerned.
But knowing that, at least because of the conflicts in Burkina Faso, at least we're getting into the exercise that you're undertaking, these people interface more with the potential threat. And the concern is they don't even understand what the campaign is about.
Well, that is why I said that if we need to drill down more or hammer, on the campaign, especially in the north, that is a welcome suggestion. But I am saying, and I am saying what I'm saying because of probably what I know, but I cannot, put out. But I think that everybody, it doesn't matter if you live in Achumakwa Ngoma, it doesn't matter if you live in Bosumtwi. Your environment, you must be conscious of your environment, and you must be concerned as to who is doing what. It's important that we do that. But yes, I can understand that because the people in the north interface with, our brothers and sisters from the Sahel, which of course is where the problem is coming from, they have to be on top of issues. I understand. I mean, it's a call in the right direction, and I think we have to take it up and then try to drill.
If you were to give an overall assessment of the See Something, Say Something campaign down the line, what would be your verdict on it?
I think that on a scale of 10, I will give it 6.5.
Okay.
Now I say 6.5. I was surprised when I went to my constituents one day, had a chat with some people, students, and they said that the national security rep, in Ashanti region was actually going around schools, educating people on the say something, see something, say something. And I believe that this was something that most national security reps in the various regions were tasked to undertake. And so for me, it was very positive. And so even school children were really, talking about it, say something, see something, yes. So by and large, but I think that, yes, there is room for more improvement and we need to do more.
Okay, now drilling down. Why are you repatriating what some have described as vulnerable refugees? What really is this exercise about?
Well, I don't know where actually that is coming from, that we are repatriating people. So, Emefa, I think that we are all aware that Burkina Faso have intensified, military operations, especially in the southern part, all to deal with the issue of terrorism. Because intelligence tells us that, the movement of this grouping is towards the south. So they basically trying to look for, a southern nation. You know what that means. You get closer to the sea. And when you get closer to the sea, exactly. So piracy and all that. So it really can aid their operations. And so that is what they are doing. And Burkina Faso has intensified its operations. And so these people, some are running away. Now, we have an approved route where you really can go through proper screening and all that. And if indeed you genuinely need help, you are provided help. We are doing this, having at the back of our mind that in 1951, Ghana actually signed and ratified the 1951 Refugee, Convention. And we know this convention defines who a refugee is, and it also do outline the protections and the rights of a refugee. We have all these things at the back of our mind. But we also cannot lose sight of the fact that we have this, armed groupings or this terrorist attack staring us in the face. So obviously, that is why I like the topic. It's a dilemma. It's you look at the issue of providing security for your people, and then you also look at being compassionate to the vulnerable in the context of terrorist attack. Obviously, this is a challenge, and it's really a complex issue.
But is there a real threat for which reason this operation is necessary, or is just targeted, so to speak, at certain people, for which reason we are doing this?
First of all, let me correct the impression that we are targeting some people. We are not targeting anybody. We are not targeting anybody.
We are not targeting people seeming to be Fulani headsmen.
Surprisingly,
children, amongst others.
I mean, we have Fulanis who are Ghanaians. We've lived with Fulanis in Ghana, only God knows how long. And so, for me, it would be absurd if we now go out there to target them. It doesn't make sense.
Okay.
But as I said, we have a complex issue on our hand. And so we need to screen whoever is coming in. If you are coming in and then you genuinely deserve assistance, we, based on the 1951 Refugee Convention, we will do what is expected of us. But when you don't, then we also, because all the operations the national security military is doing in collaboration with the various RESEC is based on intelligence.
Okay.
And so as and when we pick intelligence, we deal with the issues. I think that, I mean, I need to say, there have been instances where I have seen pictures of women carrying babies, less than a year. And as part of their luggages, you'll be surprised, ammunitions, carrying ammunitions. And then you have guns and other things, you know, hidden in certain part of cattle and all that. By, you know, man, husband, yes. Okay. So we really need to be on the lookout because, as I said, we have the Ghanaian people to protect. Okay. We have a country to protect. We have properties to protect. We cannot say that because we want to be compassionate, we will not look at the security of our nation.
Well, that's the dilemma we are trying to navigate.
Exactly.
Let me bring in our other guests also on Zoom, and a ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee, thankfully, joins us. Let's pick his thoughts on everything.
You know, that is my partner in crime.
Oh, partner in crime?
Yeah, it's my partner in crime.
Did you say crime? In quotes, okay. So,
James, forgive me, but there is no other way I can say it.
Mr. Galga, you are part of this crime, are you? Hello, Mr. Galga. Okay, so you agree to this particular crime. Your partner is in the studios.
Good evening to my partner in crime.
Yeah, bro.
Okay. Well, Mr. Galga, I would want to find out, at least, I'm sure by now, this particular operation that's been undertaken by the Armed Forces, National Security, as we're told, has been brought to the attention of the Defense and Interior Committee. What kind of briefing? I'm sure you would not want to give it all out, but you have the blessing, and you've given them the blessing. Which, really, what kind of briefing are you getting as far as the public can be told?
Well, Emefa, the committee is aware that the National Security Outfit, the Ministry of Defense, and even Interior have deployed along our northern frontier to try to protect our country from any possible terrorist infiltration coming from our next door neighbor, Burkina Faso, which has been plagued with terrorism over the period. And even given what is happening in the Sahel region in general, I mean, it makes our northern frontier very, very vulnerable. And so all along, we have been aware that some deployments have been done. And the idea is to ensure that when it becomes necessary, they will react in a manner that protects us from terror infiltration. And so to that extent, I would say, yes, we are aware that our security apparatus is on the ground and working around the clock to protect us. But in specific response to your question as to whether our committee has been briefed on the recent operation that was carried out, I would say not yet, because I'm not even sure whether the operation has been concluded. And so normally when the security apparatus sets off to undertake certain tasks, they would conclude with the operations before they brief the committee. I mean, if the committee is minded to call for some briefings in that regard.
But that there have been concerns, not to cut you, but to the extent that I know you would wait for the entire operation to be over to be briefed, but to the extent that there have been concerns about the issue about compassion. Yes, we are part of a convention, and then also we have laws also in a duty to protect our citizens. But to the extent that there are concerns that this particular operation is targeted at refugees and certain persons of some tribal descent, we are told about Fulanis amongst others. I'm sure this has been brought to the attention. Are you not concerned about it as a committee?
Well, Emefa, we have to understand one thing, that the government is very much aware of its commitments under my brother spoke about the 1951 Refugee Convention and its related protocols. Government clearly has a commitment not to, as it were, repatriate refugees who are, properly speaking, refugees to countries where they may face very serious threats to their life and fundamental freedom. So that is a principle that I am sure they are very, very much aware of. We call that the principle of non-refoulement. Mm-hmm. It's the cornerstone of the 1951 Refugee Convention. But, Emefa, having said that, it does not mean that the government cannot screen refugees who enter our country. Okay. They have every right to screen the refugees to ensure that those who come in and seek asylum in our country because of the crisis in the neighboring countries are genuine refugees. Mm. Because there are examples where people masquerade as refugees, and at the end of the day, it turns out that they are actually terrorists who disguise themselves just to infiltrate the frontiers and cause mayhem in our country. And so when they have credible intelligence, and remember that we have an arrangement in place, even with the government of Burkina Faso and other neighboring countries, where intelligence is shared amongst the participants of, say, the Accra Initiative. And so when some credible intelligence has been shared and the security apparatus decide to embark upon some operations, I think that we need to support them. But we must bear in mind that we have certain international obligations to ensure that the rights of those who are genuinely distressed, the genuine refugees amongst the numerous number of people who cross our borders, are treated in a humane manner, their human rights are protected, they are given shelter, they are given food and medicine. Okay. I think these are obligations that our country over the period has honored. Mm. I am aware that, look, the influx of refugees has placed a strain on the Regional Coordinating Council in my region, the Upper East region, where I come from. Okay. The district assemblies, they have had to spend, resources in ensuring that refugees are given temporary accommodation and so on and so forth. Sometimes the challenge is that interventions from central government coming quite too late. And so at the end of
my
the day,
my colleague Albert Story has been there, and I'm sure you can see the pictures on your screen. He's been to this particular center that you talk about. But thankfully, Mr. Tetepadi is with us. He's Executive Director of the Refugee Board. Let's test some of the things that we've heard so far. At least he's been in charge of this for some time now, I should say. Mr. Padi, thank you so much. If you would unmute. Really, let's talk about records here. I'm sure you're a man of records. So properly speaking, how many of these persons have coming over the period as refugees that you've documented, you'd say? The last time we've been asking about this, you were giving some numbers. But at the last count, what would you say it is? Because the people that we say we are targeting are those ones that are coming in illegally through our porous borders. What's your account of what we've seen so far and heard?
Good evening, Emefa, and good evening to our panelists as well.
I hope you're also not a partner in crime.
But he is my friend. He's my very good friend, more or less a brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So at least he's not a partner in crime.
And
he's a
James as
brother.
well.
Okay. Thank you once again. So give us the account, Mr. Paddy.
Yes. So so far we have registered just about 3,200 Burkinabes who have indicated their intention to seek asylum here. We are still in the process of registering more people who are coming in. What I can confidently say is that none of the Burkinabes that we have registered has been sent back. Neither have any of those that we know intend to seek asylum, those who declared their intention at the borders as they entered. Even though they haven't been registered yet, none of those people have been sent back to Cote d'Ivoire. That I can confidently say.
Okay, but in terms of figures, properly speaking, we can have that now, do we?
Well, we have certainly registered 3,200.
Okay.
We have also set up a reception center together with UNHCR. UNHCR have assisted us to set up a reception center. Mm-hmm. And that reception center already has about 500 persons there. Mm. We are actually asking the asylum seekers to move to the reception center. We're not just asking them, we're transporting them to the reception center where there will be other interventions such as food assistance, there's water, there's even electricity. We try to make them as comfortable as possible. And it also enables us to be able to account for them. Some of them have been living in the host communities for some time and have been reluctant to move. Mm-hmm. But we have stated very clearly, and we've been sensitizing the host communities as well as the asylum seekers themselves, that it's actually better for them to move to these reception centers. And once they move to the reception centers, for those who are not yet registered, we're no longer registering them in the host communities. We're asking that they move to the reception center and then we register them. We do all this together with security. We don't register people who have not been cleared by security for us to register.
Okay. Well, but I don't know. I think
because as much as for us this is a humanitarian situation.
Mr. Paddy, it looks like it froze a bit. Okay. We'll try again. We kept losing you along the line. So let's try again. Okay. Some interruption there in his Zoom, his link, but we'll try and establish connection with Mr. Paddy. Then we can wrap up on that. But Mukhtar Mumuni, thankfully, joins us also via Zoom, and he's also been working on this. And what really are your key readings from what is happening so far? We've been hearing from government, we've heard from national security, we've been hearing from the minister also, deputy minister, I should say, in the past few minutes. Also tell us, at least all week we've been interacting with him on this particular matter. Government insists that properly so-called registered refugees in this country have not been targeted or are unscathed when it comes to this particular operation. But what are you learning so far in terms of this whole operation, Mukhtar?
Well, thank you for this, and good evening to your viewers, and good evening to the senior colleagues on this program. Yes, first of all, we've been receiving news of forced repatriation of Burkinabes who are here seeking asylum, people who are running from the terrorist violence in Burkina Faso. Of course, in the last few days, we've seen government communication to the contrary, that there hasn't been any forced repatriation of these individuals. And from our end, of course, we've been working on the field in many parts of the northern Ghana, and we are very familiar with things on the ground. And so what some of these people tell us are instances where individuals within the Fulbe community are sent back. But we don't have any evidence in terms of forced repatriation of these individuals back into Burkina Faso. And so from my end, if you're looking for confirmation of whether there has been forced repatriation or not, I'm not able to say that. But there are individuals who have told us just around the 12th and the 13th of this month, we have reports of these things going on in the northern parts of the country without necessarily mentioning specific places. Mm-hmm. My concern is there's a lot of international coverage of this. And so it's given us a lot of bad press in terms of what it means for us in terms of security. We've seen the UNHCR, quotes and mentioned this severally in many reports, and several other international agencies talking about this. And my senior colleagues made references to the UN Convention 1951 on the status of refugees and how, or the obligations of states in dealing with, refugees, people who have, well-grounded fear of persecution in their country and do not have any willingness or desire to go back. We need to be able to ensure that people who are genuinely seeking protection or running away from fear here are adequately catered for. And from my background in terms of the things we look at from a human security perspective, it is very, very important that the form in which these things happen is important. Perception is very, very key. Already, we've read several reports in Burkina Faso of government officials commenting on this, and it doesn't look good enough for us. And so we need to be able to sanitize the conversations around that here internally and externally, because what we're doing has a proclivity of, inspiring some counterproductive outcomes for us. Okay. And we are in a very, very complex situation in terms of dealing with violent extremism. It's a very, very nuanced security problem that all nations are struggling with. And so we have to get it right from the beginning. Okay. The point, we get attacked is too late. And I listened to the Honorable Minister talk about if you see something, say something earlier, which is very, very key. It's very fundamental that we bring on board. We're able to build, community goodwill and support and get everybody's support in terms of supporting this and willing to volunteer information to local law enforcement officials. First of all, the word terrorism, violent extremism, and the things around this kind of security threat, we do not have any local word equivalence for it. And so if you go to the northern part of the country and looking to communicate this, it's a very complex thing. Okay. And so we have to have very, very dedicated effort and a system that allows all of us to be involved in preventing it. Okay. Other than that, we would create unintended consequences that would be complex for us all.
Mukhtar, thank you so much. That's Mukhtar Mumuni there. But I'll get into the audience questions. But one thing is established at this point, because all through the week since we started talking about this, I'm yet to get anyone actually come out to say that indeed this particular person has been targeted, or heard any of them say that, yes, we've been targeted and we've been repatriated, amongst others, beyond the hearsay. And everyone on this panel at this point is yet to tell me whether they've actually seen from what you've been saying. But the last time we spoke, we mentioned about 20,000 so far that have been, successfully repatriated, screened and everything, and known that they came in illegally. Has the numbers risen? What's the current number? Do we know?
The situation is so fluid. Mm-hmm. It is actually fluid. And the problem we have is that because many people are using unapproved routes and then also residing in the communities along the northern border, it makes it difficult to even, so we use our intelligence, just as the refugee board is doing theirs, we also use our intelligence to really pick. Okay. Because we always have to be on top of issues, security-wise. So we also use our intelligence on the ground to also pick, as and when people come in.
But I keep hearing unapproved routes. Are there any measures in place? At least we know we have a number of these unapproved routes. So, are there any measures in place really to at least minimize
definitely
the number of unapproved routes we have?
Our borders have been porous from only God knows. That really is a problem. But that is what makes it more important for the security agencies to really spread our tentacles, to really deal with issues of, these porous borders. For now, yes, our men are on the ground, those who are picking intelligence, those who are also, making sure that, our borders are protected, they are on the ground. Okay. For now, basically, that is what, because no matter, we will have to protect the citizenry, we will have to make sure that we maintain the peace.
But in protecting the citizenry also, which we all agree should happen, but of course, in some operations like this, there's the likelihood of some excesses.
Well, I haven't, no report has been made so far of any excesses. As you rightly said, since the last time I spoke to you, I kept saying that we haven't targeted any group, and we haven't. You'll be surprised. People are on their own volition going back to Burkina. Okay. And so we have the Ghanaian authorities as well as, working with the Burkinabe authorities to make sure that those who want to go back, we help them to go back. So the issue of targeting people is really something I find a bit absurd.
But when exactly did we start this operation, and when is it ending? Or it's going to be in perpetuity? What exactly?
When it's going to end in MFI, it will be difficult for me to say, because we don't know when people will stop coming. Okay. I mean, as long as Ghana has the peace and stability, people will want to come. We will also receive them, but we will, screen them and make sure that whatever reasons brought them here, they indeed are here for those reasons. Okay. So if it is genuinely you are seeking for asylum, genuinely you want to be here, you need help, no two ways about that, we will provide that. I mean, Mr. Paddy mentioned the reception center where they are being fed and also being given free, medical help. I mean, all these things are being done. And these are some of the things, the 1951 Convention actually outlines. And we are making sure that we treat them with dignity and, also uphold all the humanitarian values. Okay. That we will do.
But as part of the screening, I'm sure, like you've been mentioning, some of them you found weapons on, amongst others. Do we just screen and then just let them go back? What happens? Have we had any arrests so far out of this?
When they screen and those who genuinely need the assistance or who are genuinely seeking asylum, of course, Tetepasi said it. Well, I called him Tipadi, forgive me if I mean, he told us where they are kept. But those who obviously are here for other reasons, we use what, the security expert will use to deal with the situation. Okay. And so if we have to take whatever we need to take, hand them over to the Burkinabe authorities, we do that. Okay. And then, you ask to go back because you are here, not because you are being persecuted, but you are here because you want to do something else. Okay. Precisely.
Let's get into the audience questions now. A number of them. We'll start with this one from Francisca. How do refugee populations fit into the equation of national security, and how does Ghana provide support while mitigating potential security risks? I'm sure Tatapadi will also help with that. And David says, how does Ghana's defense strategy address both traditional security threats and emerging humanitarian concerns? So the dilemma that we've been talking about. Tay says, how does Ghana's refugee policy align with the country's national security objectives, and what measures are in place to ensure the safety of both citizens and displaced populations? Hashmin says, could you provide examples of specific initiatives or programs that demonstrate Ghana's commitment to addressing national security while upholding compassion? Maxwell, in what ways does Ghana collaborate with international partners to enhance its security efforts while ensuring compassion is not compromised? Well, I've heard you say that we are doing this, Defense Ministry, Interior, and all that. Do we have international agencies as part of this, or is just a national,
I mean, we have the Refugee Board, and then we also have the UNHCR, working together. But I will tell you what, also as part of government ensuring that we live up to all the protocols as outlined in the 1951 Convention, government again has secured a 30-acre land to put up, housing, because we do not know when this is going to end. Okay. And looking at the problem we have within the Sahel region, we always have to be, ahead of the game. And so government is taking steps to actually get some housing. So if we are to find ourselves in such a situation again, then we wouldn't be found wanting. So these are some of the steps government is taking to deal with the situation.
Okay. I don't know if Mr. Gaga is still with us on Zoom. So really the concern is about navigating, this particular dilemma, national security versus compassion. And there have been a number of questions that we've touched on so far already, but I'm told that Mr. Gaga has left us. But do we have Mr. Paddy still with us? Because there are some questions about refugee policy aligning with the country's national security objectives. Do we have anything like that in place? Tay wants to know. And what measures are in place to ensure the safety of both citizens and displaced populations? Hello, Mr. Paddy. You would have to unmute, Mr. Paddy. Okay, it appears that we have a terrible connection to Mr. Paddy, but we'll go through it. They were asking also about some specific initiatives or programs that demonstrate Ghana's commitment to addressing national security while upholding compassion. But I'm sure your brother may have given you some briefing on this policy and how it aligns such that both citizens and displaced populations are protected. You've been talking about that 30-acre land, amongst others, but that housing project, do we have a timeline that will come up? Are we still in
this problem actually started about a week. And yes, and government is, once we've acquired the land, obviously government is going to find the money to put up the houses for us to really, because we don't know the numbers we're going to get. And so we have to prepare for anything, that is ahead of us. So that is also being done. But in terms of security, I'd like to say that we from the Ministry of Defense have been saying over the period that so far we're trying to put up some FOBs, forward operating bases, which has been dotted along, our border areas, especially in the north, 15 of them with service centers and all that. When this is done, when it is completed, and we're looking to complete them by maybe give or take middle of next year, we should be able to then we will have permanent, because these are, for want of a better word, I would say they are miniature barracks. So then we will have men permanently, there to man our borders. And I believe that when we have our men permanently there, what it does basically is to reduce reaction time if there is a problem. Yes, I think that when we're able to do all these things, we will have a better, a better and effective way of dealing with such situations. And so we'll be able to really deal with the issue of terrorism as and when it rears its ugly head. And also in situations like this, I think we can better handle it. Okay,
but concerns, at least, when we put out the flyer, there are questions that at least we've had to sieve down, is the concern that are they not already with us? At least we've heard some security analysts say that, yes, they are part of our daily lives, amongst others, for which reason when we see something, we ought to say something. But the threats, between 1 to 10, where really are we, you would say? I know you would not want to put out the entire situation, but at least what should we know as citizens?
I think that we are not keeping anything from you, but what we want every Ghanaian to know, as I said, it's a collective thing. We all must put our shoulder to the wheel of, trying to secure our nation. As you said, yes, I have heard some school of thought saying that these people have already infiltrated. But I can confidently tell you that our security men, our intelligence officers are really on top of issues. I mean, to that extent, I think that is what you need to know. We don't intend to scare anybody, but I have confidence in our men. I have so much respect, and I know they are on top of their job, and they will work to make sure this country is protected. Yes, I mean, it's like, a soccer game. You have a striker trying to score, and you have a defender who also, prevent the striker from scoring. So as to who is on top of the game, you carry the day. Yes, they have something sinister up their sleeve, but I know that our men also have good intentions to make sure that this country is protected. Emefa, Ghanaians must all help. We must all be part of this fight against terrorism. Our men are up to the task. I have no doubt at all to question their competence and their professionalism. I know they can deliver.
Okay. Well, is Mukhtar Mumuni still with us on Zoom? If you are, Mukhtar, I'm curious. At least we've all mentioned that there's no real evidence so far that the persons or specific tribes or any groupings are targeted as we speak, beyond the hearsay, but really how we are supposed to be navigating this particular dilemma of national security versus compassion. I'm sure you have a word or two when it comes to really maintaining this and ensuring that there are no excesses in this particular operation seeking to protect the ordinary Ghanaian.
First of all, I need to properly, and also clarify that what we are looking at in terms of whether people are targeted or not, we are looking at a lot of developments and a lot of data, but what I can say is that for sure, there is a persecution of Fulbe community members in many parts of the country. And when I say that, I mean that there's a very systematic culture of discrimination and persecution or related acts against Fulbe, many members of the Fulbe community. Anyone who works in this area knows this very, very well.
As part of this particular operation, you mean? In this particular operation?
Part of this particular operation, like I mentioned, from the 12th, 13th of this month, we started receiving reports on the ground in terms of how people are sent back into Burkina Faso. But to use the word forced repatriation, I need more information and evidence because I will need to show that, as part of what I say. And so I'm unable to confirm that those repatriations were forced repatriation. But away from that, there's a culture, a systematic culture of, discrimination and persecution. And when I say that in detail, I mean that many members of the Fulbe community face a lot of, discrimination and all kinds of things around marginalization when they interface with local community actors, state actors, and this specifically includes police officers at checkpoints. They go through things relating to extortion, they go through things relating to arbitrary detention and extortion. These things are very, very prevalent. We're seeing even access to public health care, public transport, and many other things that ordinarily you should be free to access in this country. And it's based historically on the issues of citizenship and issues of, identity. These things are key in terms of the threat that we're looking at. June 2021, there was a young guy of the Fulbe, background in the northern part. I may not say a specific area where, but this individual, relying on these issues of discrimination and grievances built around those things, he left to join Jenim. Jenim is one of the deadliest terrorist groups in the Sahel, based in Mali. And months later, he committed suicide. But before that, he left a short video, narrating these things along discrimination and the culture of persecution along ethnic lines, and specifically the Fulbe community. We've had several incidences like that have been built around those grievances. And terrorist groups are looking for grievances. They're looking to weaponize grievances and mobilize people, recruit people, and engage in attacks. So whatever kind of exercise we are conducting as a state and as local community members, we need to ensure that we do not create situations that can create grievances that extremist groups can weaponize against us. And I can tell you, anyone who is working in PV in Ghana is extremely concerned about this incident, this situation, the state or the position of Fulbe community members in Ghana. And we have to take it very serious. I needed to say this because it would be very disservice, to talk about these security issues without tackling the issue of Fulbe in Ghana. And so there's that. And in the next few months, months, we will be coming out with a report along these lines. Of course, we all are encouraged to, have communication that is supportive of peace and state actions, around security. But we have to also do as best as we can to highlight the reality of the situation, especially situations that can, be weaponized as vulnerabilities, to disturb the security situation.
But as part of this particular operation, knowing that this is not the first time you're hearing that members of this Fumbe communities are, already they are facing their own kind of discrimination before even this exercise started, is there some kind of marching orders to at least be fair in this whole process, such that it's not like, even though you may say it's not targeted, because they are already feeling discriminated against, there may be some...
I actually was going to ask Elijah some questions, because from his presentation, I get the import that he was referring to the police. That is, so because he made mention of the fact that even going through checkpoints,
already there are extortion issues, yes.
And these are issues that we need to report straight away. I mean, this sort of things, every now and then you get some police people engaging in it. Not all of them do, but you get a few recalcitrant ones, engaging in them. And I think these are issues.
Well, taking advantage of the situation amongst others.
Well, I mean, and then the issue of not having access to medical care is something that, of course, we really have to look at. I personally would like to have a copy of his report, because it is something that we really have to look at holistically and then deal with the issue. But I think that these jihadis or the terrorists, using certain situation as a weapon, I think that it will not be only in that area alone. I know for a fact that the Ghana Armed Forces has embarked on a program to really make certain places accessible, because there are certain places in the north where you don't have, the accessibility is a problem. We have the 48th Engineer Regiment, going to create, make roads to make the place accessible. We have also the Ghana Armed Forces going in to provide boreholes and all that, and also providing certain small, jobs for the youth to have something to do. These are things that, the Ghana Armed Forces, because I have sat in a meeting where these issues were discussed, and the CDS was present where these issues were discussed. So yes, I believe it's not going to be the Fumbi alone, but we have to look at the issue holistically and then find problems, because we need lasting problems. We don't need to choose and select. We need to, deal with the issue head on.
Okay. I'm told Mr. Paddy is via phone now. At least some of the questions bothered on his board, and to at least tie it all up for us as we try to wrap up this. Mr. Paddy, if you can hear me on phone now. So there were questions about how our refugee policy as a country is aligning with the country's national security objectives, and what measures in place there are to ensure the safety of both citizens and then also displaced populations. And Mukhtar Mumuni also has been speaking about the Fumbe community. I'm sure you can tie that in nicely if that has also been brought to the attention of the refugee board, and if there's a particular action you're taking when it comes to persons of Fumbe descent.
Indeed, the refugee law, the Ghana refugee law, recognizes that national security is paramount. And so even when somebody has been recognized as a refugee, if they are deemed as a threat to national security, that refugee status can be revoked. And so there's no ambiguity at all about that. And indeed, even the UN Refugee Convention also recognizes the security of states that host refugees and places that are above anything else. So I think that it's important that we have this perspective. Now, with respect to specific communities, nobody who has approached the Ghana Refugee Board to apply for asylum has been turned away based on which community they are part of. Again, I can confidently say that. And so I think that we need to be careful when we are presenting that narrative. Because sometimes people take it and run with it. But clearly, anybody who approaches the Ghana Refugee Board, and I know also that anybody who states their intention to seek asylum at the point of entry is referred to the Ghana Refugee Board for the process to start.
But in terms of ensuring that there are no excesses in this particular exercise, I'm sure your board is also on the lookout, even though at least you'll be working closely with government on this. Have we not had cases of any excesses being reported so far, as we're hearing on the ground, you'd say?
Absolutely, we are very much on the lookout for any possible excesses. And I'll be the first to point that out if we come across it. We liaise very effectively with the Ghana Immigration Service, who are at our consuls at the point of entry. We have standard operating procedures that we work with. And I can say with confidence that any individual who is not a security threat, number one, and who requests to seek asylum is referred to us for us to do our investigation. But it's important to note that the national security is paramount in all of this. But the Ghana Refugee Board is ready to assist any person who needs any sort of intervention with respect to refugee status and anything in relation to that.
Okay, we're grateful. That's Tetekwa Opadi, he's Executive Secretary of the Ghana Refugee Board. If we have more questions, let's just run through them and then be sure that we've covered all the angles when it comes to this in terms of the audience participation. So we have a few more of them. I see one from Savia. Okay, Sophie's on first. How does the government involve local communities and civil society organizations in shaping Ghana's national security policies to incorporate compassion and inclusivity? Xavier says, are there any specific policy considerations or frameworks being developed to guide decision-making at the crossroads of security and compassion in Ghana? And Joe says, what role does the Refugee Board play in balancing, I think he's been speaking on that, humanitarian needs of displaced persons? And then if he says, what are the key security challenges currently faced by Ghana and how do they intersect with the need for compassion? We take the last one, Latte. Okay, what steps is Ghana taking to enhance public awareness and understanding of the national security challenges the country faces? So I'm sure public awareness, you say something. And also there was one that I saw earlier that he's been talking about the specific policy considerations. Okay, the ones about civil society involvement and the ordinary person. So I'm sure you can tie both in wrapping up on this.
I have been saying all along that security is not a preserve of one person or a certain group of people. It is a collective thing that every Ghanaian must put his or her shoulder to help. So it doesn't matter if you're a civil society, it doesn't matter if you are a student, it is a collective duty for every Ghanaian. Yes, so basically everybody is involved. Gone were the days when security was a preserve of a few people. These days, security, it's never a preserve of only a few. It is a collective duty, and every Ghanaian must get involved.
And you get a sense that since we started this kind of public awareness, more and more Ghanaians are getting involved than they used to?
I believe so. I believe so, because even now, people are going to even schools to educate younger children, to imbibe in them, this sense of being part of the security of your environment. For me, that is a step in the right direction. And I think that those are the things we really need to do, because educating the people for them to know that it is a responsibility for a citizen to be conscious of his or her environment on issues of security is something that we all must take up seriously. And it is something we really must do more.
And finally, what really must I see before I say something in order to prevent people, unfairly targeting people when indeed there's no cause to?
That is why we say that when you see, you say, and then you say to the security agencies who are trained to analyze issues. So you tell them what you saw, and then they will analyze, so that, we'll not take the laws into our own hands. So when you see whatever you see, any suspicious movement, trust me, some of these activities, it takes time. And then, you see, one thing I have noticed is that a lot of Ghanaians are not conscious of their environment. In certain jurisdiction, trust me, even when you're walking in the street, somebody somewhere, before you realize there will be a police asking, you would think that probably the police was just going his way. No, somebody might have alerted the police. I think that if we are conscious and we report whatever we see to the police, we leave it to them to really analyze issues and then deal with the security.
Okay, we're grateful for your time, Mr. Kofi Amankwa Manu, Deputy Defense Minister and MP for Atwima, Nkwawuma, and we also had
important.
Okay,
we also Nkwawuma for me is very important.
Okay,
everywhere I go, that is my.
I mentioned it. Yes. We also had Tete Paddy, Executive Secretary of the Ghana Refugee Board. Mukhtar Mumini also joined as the Executive Director of FOSI, and also James Agauga, Ranking Member Defense and Interior Committee. For our radio audience, we have a Walk with Jesus. Prime Take is up next on TV. I am Emefa Apawu. There's more when you log on to myjournalline.com. Many thanks for your company.